there was one missing, right?
It had actually already been sent.
Ah.
It may have gone to Bill's.
I know exactly how far I got from it.
I know exactly how far you got.
No,
I'll use settle in.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. Is this thing on? Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's the IETF. We gotta, be very serious about the microphones. Hi, I'm Brian. This is Tommy. We are the co-chairs, two of the three co-chairs of IPPM. This is IPPM. I see many familiar faces here. You're all in the right place. If you're not here for IPPM, then you're in the wrong place. Greg, actually, you should probably come over on this side because that's like a bad side for people who are going to be up at the mic a bunch. We know. So we have a exceptionally full schedule today. So I would basically go ahead and jump right into it. Wow, it's been a while since we had like a first thing Monday morning meeting. So we should actually show the note well, because some people, this might be the first time you see it. This is an IETF meeting. Anything you say in this meeting is an IETF contribution. We have policies about conduct in the IETF. We have policies about the disclosure of IPR. Please make sure that you have read especially BCP 78 and BCP 79 before contributing anything to the IETF, as they outline your responsibilities with respect to IPR in the IETF. Like I said, full schedule. We're actually going to do from the chair here some discussion about the status of things that are currently in last call, with the exception of the metric and initial registry. So we're going to have a little longer discussion about that to make sure we wrap that last call up. The other last calls that we're in, I think, are pretty straightforward. We have essentially three sections of working group work. We have the metrics registry discussion because we'd like to get that finished and ready to send up to a shepherd after this meeting. The next one is the IOM discussion. We'd like to basically take some action items that have slipped since the last time. This is on our side, the chair side, that we need to go through, and we need to figure out, what's the right home for these things, where where are we going to move this work forward, and how we get, some real progress on this before the Montreal cycle. And then we have 20 minutes at the end of that section on alternate marking and related work. I strongly suspect that we have underscheduled time for these discussions. We are going to focus on the metrics registry, IOM, and alternate marking. We will make sure that we have sufficient time for all three of those topics during this slot. If that means that we have to push the next screen off, then so be it. We have 4 additional presentations that were sent in that we may have time to get to at the end of this. These are not lightning talks. We're talking about revising the lightning talk policy so that we can, turn IPPM into a slightly better venue for. I think we have a lot of expertise in this room, and we have a lot of energy and interest in doing different kinds of work that is related to these things. And we'd like this to be less of a forum for, hey, look at my draft and please talk about it on the list, and more a way to get people who are trying to do new work in this space to be able to ask questions, and for us to be able to ask questions of them. So we're experimenting a little bit with the format, and we'll see how that works in Montreal. For today, hopefully we can get to these 4. There were 4 or 5 other presentations that came in too late to even get on this list. But if we don't get to these, I apologize to the people here. Congratulations, 8468 has been published since the last time. I think it was basically in off 48 the last time. Yay, progress, one more thing off of our list. IETF IPPM TWAMP Yang is still in misref. Is there anything that we need to pay attention to on that?
Yeah.
Right, it's just the registry. Oh, okay, cool, good. Okay, check. We have the last call on draft IETF IPPM initial and metric registry, which was extended to end with the discussion today. We'll follow up anything that happens there on the list, obviously, but we're going to finish that out. Thank you to everyone who commented after the end of the last call. Do you have something you want to add there?
No, I think that's it.
Also, I realize we do need minute takers to go into minutes and also JabberScribe. Can we get quickly some volunteers for that? Can you do Jabber? Can we get a minute taker to do stuff in the Etherpad? Anybody? We've had some great minutes before. We'll definitely need some for discussion.
Minutes. Now you're checking.
Anyone?
Let's see. Who do I see who I can pick on here?
Sweta?
Lights down, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Sweta.
Oh, thanks. All right.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll note, because we are short on time, I'm going to run a timer on my phone for the various things that I have a shorter time constraint. And so if you hear an alarm going off, that's what that is.
Looking at draft IETF IPPM stamp, we had a lot of support and no substantive lack of support for that on the list. So thank you for everybody who has read that. The last call on that is ending in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're done. This document needs a shepherd. So see, Al, you can't do it because you're an author. Aren't you on stamp? Yes.
No.
Are you sure? Okay, right, yeah, okay, yeah, so we can't make you do this other one. Good. Tal, can you do this one? That'd be great, thanks. I will go ahead and assign you. And that takes us then to...
Just a brief update on Aura.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your Gmail address is the current active one, right?
It's not working. So
It's not working. Okay, I'll just do that. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Al Morton, and I'm one of the many authors on the Advanced Unidirectional Route Assessment. It's got to be turned on, or Ippm closer. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm going to disengage here. That way it can move around. Okay, good deal. In fact, I just noticed that there's another draft elsewhere in the IETF using the same name, Aura. We were first, guys. Come on, back off. So we're off. Next slide. Oh, it's showing there. Okay, good. So this is just a reminder. We're basically measuring and defining how we describe route ensembles. It's a whole list of routes here, and you can see how that would be matching up with the diagram, where you've got one place of divergence there, one multipath, 3-1 and 3-2. Next slide. So the most important part about this list of things is the hops. It is an ordered list. We sorted that terminology out, and there's a reminder of what it looks like. And there's so HIJ was a host, but we can learn much more about that. It has to have an identity. That's always been a part of this, either an IP address or a DNS result name. But we can also add things like the arrival interface, departure interface, timestamps, and round-trip delay measurements associated with that host. And I've got some green stuff there. That's what we've associated with in resolving some comments. We've associated those two interfaces with RFC 5837. So we've got more backup now, basically, for the kind of information that we're putting in. Next slide. So here's the lingering to do and done. We had a whole bunch of reviewers. Where are you? Where's Aaliyah? Where is Yari, who was volunteered, not actually a volunteer? We'll resolve that on the next slide. But we did all these other things. We've got packet fields can ID a flow. That's an important one, and that's now referenced to 6438. I just talked about the interface names, so we'll use that. And these are all Carlos Pignataro co-author comments before he was an author. We've added some cautions for the methods we have in the draft. We can easily do that for some others. And Frank, we had a comment from you about the IONM loopback bit, and I believe that we've covered that now. So next slide. The next steps. It doesn't make sense to ping to death our volunteer reviewers, so we need some more volunteer reviewers. And I know there's people interested in this topic. Everybody measures traceroute. Everybody measures it with Paris traceroute. A lot of people use the MDA algorithm when they measure traceroute. So we're trying to go a few steps beyond that methodology, but that was kind of our starting place. And so now everybody in the room can raise their hand and volunteer as a reviewer. Great. That's footer, right? Yes, I remembered you. No, it should be a good thing. Should be a good thing. Thank you, Foot. Anybody else? Frank, thank you, Frank. And a lot of people are hiding behind the column here. That's okay. That used to be a round column. So, okay, we didn't get too many volunteers, but we've got a few. So please review and read the draft, and in particular, sections 5 and 6, round trip delay and analysis. That would be good if we got some more review of that. But everything is up for topics. Please, Brian. Oh, you'll do the delay. Oh, yes, okay.
I think you've already done that yet. You haven't changed it, so.
Yes, that's right. That was the TCP stuff. But,
great.
Yeah. It's too late now. You missed that one. All right, so I think that does it, Tom.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Al.
Very welcome. And while we're switching slide decks here, I wanted to make mention that the groups now receive 2 liaisons on the topic of capacity measurement. And there's going to be a side meeting about that during this week. Please come and see me after this session if you would like to join that. A few people have already said so by email, so please come see me. So now we're talking about...
Is there a room? Are there coordinates for that yet?
No, we're going to sort it out and we'll put it on the list.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, it'll be in the next couple of days. Let me say that, and out of the way of most sessions, I would guess. So this is the performance metric registry. We have initial contents. That's the draft you're looking at there, and then next slide is the registry, the design of the registry itself without contents. So again, I'm Al Morton. We've gone through 18 versions of this. It covers. Overall, it covers active metrics, passive metrics, and hybrid metrics. Next slide. We've made everything, the possibility of uniqueness is preserved here in this metric registry. So we've got, basically tons of information in a series of columns, which I'll show you on the next slide. But we had originally talked about all the different kinds of identifiers we needed, and that's what we're going to concentrate our final discussions on today. Next slide. So we have this concept up at the top of categories in blue, and then off to the right we have the various columns. So the summary column. That's what's actually going to appear in the IANA web pages version of the registry. So just the ID, the name, the uniform resource identifiers, description, references, change control, and version number of the registry that the entry conforms to. And that's pretty much all you're going to see on the web, unless you click through. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. The rest of the categories are the metric definition, method of measurement, the output formats, additional information, and any comments that come in as we're kind of revising these metric things. So next slide. So as I said, we had a simpler plan for display of these registry entries. So just a reminder what the summary looks like. This is what, it's a little bit jammed together, but this is what the web page on IANA's website would look like. It would have the ID number, which is, like 123 at the beginning, and then the very long name, which we worked on and finalized the naming format in Buenos Aires. And then we have the URIs, which currently include a URN, a Uniform Resource Name, and a URL to a much longer text, HTMLized text file, which contains all the detail that's necessary to specify a unique metric. You can see descriptions there for things like round trip delay, which is an active metric, which is UDP, which is 95th percentile of the units of the measurement there, and so forth. And we've got a lot of related metrics. They basically use almost all the same references. And so we've a little bit consolidated on the detailed information when we did that. So each major section in the initial contents draft sometimes specifies as many as 4 metrics. Like, for example, if there's delay and loss there, those are very closely related metrics in the way we've defined active metrics in IPPM here. So we've tried to save some space. So that's the simple version, with a little more information off to the right there. That's what you would see. And you'd be able to click through to an HTMLized text file. The HTML is all about making section numbers and RFC numbers live. So you can click right through to the RFC that is being referenced there. And let's go, Mirya.
Mirya Kulevin. I'm wondering why the RFC name is in the name, because I understand that this gives it gives a implicit reference, but when you update the RFC and you get a new RFC number, you have to change the name, right?
That's right. So it would be a new metric then. It would be a different row in the metric registry and a different entry.
So
does that really make sense if I just update the RFC to have a clarification or whatever? Or
So
the same metric.
So clarification question is basically you're saying if you update the RFC and change its number, but you don't touch that particular metric.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that what's concerning you?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Or
Do you understand the question?
I think I understand it better now. The question is, wouldn't there be yet another RFC number that results from that update?
May have 2 duplicate metrics. Like if the RFC update doesn't touch one of the metrics.
It's also, you may not change the metric's name, but then it points to the wrong RFC. Or you update the metric's name and then you have a duplicate.
So I think the answer that we wrote about in the draft would mean that, or would result in us retiring, for example, metric 1. It would be marked obsolete, and we'd have another ID number with a new name. And
does that make sense? Because when somebody uses metric 1 and you obsolete it, even so it's the same metric and it's still valid, right?
Well, if we changed it because we needed to fix something, is it really still valid? These are good points. Let's see what the draft says about this, and we'll make this a point to resolve, Mirya. All right.
Just one comment on that. If we keep with that scheme, then it essentially means that it is good that whenever we're defining new metrics, that they're essentially isolated to their own RFCs, such that any change to the RFC by definition means a change to that metric.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, this first round of metrics that we're looking at there are they're all going to be defined in the initial contents RFC. So they'll basically all have the same number at the start. There might be new numbers and new metric names that result from that if we change them. So let's work that detail out. See what we can clarify about that. All right. So this results in you saw those names, and they're kind of a complicated format, but it's a good format in that it's fairly exact. What we decided to do was to have a fairly well-specified set of sub-elements for the names that you can use. And each of these elements is defined here. For example, so RT delay is round-trip delay. That seems pretty simple. One-way delay, same thing. So there's going to be a sub-registry for each one of these. And people can add to these over time. This is fully extensible. But the main point is that we don't want someone saying, spelling out one-way delay and also meaning the same thing as OW delay. That's the main point here. So it's just a matter of nailing down specific names for the kinds of metrics we've used quite frequently. Next slide. All right. So here's the content updates. So we're closing the working group last call opens. We've got the we had a good set of comments from Heitor Ganzelli from the NIC in Brazil, and we clarified the description of roles there. We've got typically in measurement, we've got an active measurement in particular. We've got a source of the active stream, and we've got a destination that all those active packets have been sent to. And you need to nail down which role you're playing when you're specifying a metric for measurement, and your measurement device is going to conform with this. So we've clarified that, and we also made some references to the LMAP framework and the LMAP Yang model, which Heitor was actually using down in Brazil. So that helped him out a lot. We got another IANA review from Michelle Cotton. Michelle, are you here? No, okay. How about Tom Petch and Dale R. Worley?
I don't see Tom.
Okay, so well, we got a good review from Michelle. We resolved all those comments. I believe we resolved every comment except the kind of combination Tom and Dale one, which was about considerations for the uniform resource name that we thought we would add here. So let's see. Oh, yes, and one of the other comments was that IANA uses a group name now. So we've adopted that concept, and it's actually in our mock-up. So next slide. So this is it's going to be a little hard to read here, but like I said, we've now got a name for a group of registries. It's the performance metrics group. And if you go to IANA registries, this is the kind of thing you see. The dates, the registration procedures, the experts, and so forth who are involved. And then as you scan down the page, you'll see a click through to the performance metrics registry, and then the performance metric name elements. And we've seen both of those in the previous slides. So that's how this thing would typically be constructed now. Next slide. So here's the question for today. We've got these three things. We've got names of the metrics that we worked out in great detail with the Buenos Aires format. We've also got a 16-bit integer, which is the identifier. And we've got this thing that we thought we were going to define called the URN, the Uniform Resource Name. It was going to be under the IETF level. It was going to define a new level of metrics. It was going to define a new level under that for performance. And we would simply be prepending this URN to the name, and that would make the complete name. So the real question is, do we need that now? And also the URI contains a URL to the file, which is the HTMLized registry entry. If you go look at the draft, if you look at the major sections, those are the kinds of information, those major sections are what's going to appear when you click on this URL. It's going to bring up all the detail. Why are we doing that? Because it would make the registry completely unusable if every column was way off to the right, and if everybody who wanted to write a new metric had to start from some big columnar thing on the IANA page. It's a lot easier for people to just grab this text file, modify it to their heart's content, write another internet draft that then becomes an RFC that then would be introduced in the registry, or an internet draft that could go under expert review. That's the way that metrics from other standards bodies can get listed here. If it becomes a standard someplace else, or if another standards body wants a registered metric, then the group of registry experts would review that. So the question for the group is, do we need all three of these things? And I'm happy to put in that I think the answer is no. Once we came around with a very well-defined naming format, and obviously we have the integers for the identifiers. I mean, frankly, if I'm going to use these two pieces of information, I will use the numeric identifier in a protocol, and I'll use the name format in documentation, or an actual report of measurements using the registered metrics. And I don't need the URN. So comments on that?
Hi, Brian Trammell as an individual. This is a nitpick that I should probably take offline. Is there so 16-bit integers? Why 16 bits? Why not just have it an unbounded integer type? I mean, is there like a wire format that you need to stuff this into?
Well, we imagined that was true for LMAP, that we wanted.
So okay, we inherited this from LMAP, but
yeah.
But is that still the case with LMAP? Didn't they Yangify things in such a way that it's not stuck to 16 bits anymore?
That's a good question. So
okay, yeah, look into it. But
all
yeah,
right.
this just sort of like jumped up at me is I hope we don't run out of that space. But when you go to IANA and say create me a 16-bit space, they take that as an implicit signal to how picky they should be or how picky the expert should be.
Right.
And I don't know that that's a signal that we need.
Okay. So if does it make your whole comment go away if we make it 32 bits?
Just make it an unbounded size integer.
An unbounded integer.
32 is fine.
All right. Because we do have a constraint on
56 bits, so it fits in JSON.
Okay. No. we do have a constraint on metrics getting into the registry. They need to be in widespread use.
Yeah.
And we kind of thought 16 was enough for that.
I hope it is.
Yeah. All right. Good enough. Okay. So I think that's we're getting pretty close to the end here. So any other comments on the getting rid of URNs?
Yes, please. Brian Trammell, as an individual. Yes, please.
Okay, let's do that. And that means that we don't have to add a bunch of policy stuff now.
Exactly.
About the URNs.
Yeah.
And
I'm just saying this also as the document shepherd for this one. Yeah, get rid of the URNs.
Yeah, I think it's fairly simple to do at this point, and like I said, it doesn't add a lot of value.
Yeah.
Now that we've got the.
I think it was a useful way to frame the question.
Yeah.
And we've answered the question now.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So, any other issues? Since we're closing the last call today. Today is the last call day, closure day, when we're going to close the last call.
We've had enough discussion on the list for this, right? So
Yeah.
I can click the buttons now.
Yeah.
We need to do 5,
4,
3,
2. Happy
1.
New Year. All right. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Done.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
And we got back some time we can use for IOM.
That's what I was hoping for.
Thank you. All right, so I think we are on to IOM.
Yeah.
As we are switching over, Frank, if you could come up. The blue sheets had been sent out. We've had some people come in. Where are the blue sheets now?
Oh, yeah. Blue sheets.
And can we just do another round?
Wait. Okay. So
If you have not signed them, please make sure you do.
yeah, hands up for who hasn't signed the blue sheets yet. Oh, we're actually doing pretty good. Okay, there's one there. Can you get them to the people who? And where's the other blue sheet? Oh, it's straight. Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
So can you make sure it goes over this way? Yes. Thanks.
Okay.
Make sure you have your timer ready to go. I think we need
We have
that.
a little bit more time, and we'll probably.
Yeah, but we only have
We
something like 15 drafts.
Great. Yeah.
That people will
Go fast.
might speak to. Okay, so Tommy, sorry.
You want 1 minute? You want me to get my 1 minute?
Yeah, get your 1 minute thing ready. Some framing things. So Tommy asked me to go and kind of host this particular session, and we try to go and pull in everybody that has something on IOM so that at least we get the whole thing discussed, later on categorized, grouped, and then have a conversation on how we want to go and take the individual categories forward, and then eventually also individual drafts. Even more, like, ooh, man.
Yes.
So this is really sensitive then. Next slide. So from an overall agenda perspective, this is how we are thinking of spending the 40 minutes. We have one working group draft, which we typically refer to as the data draft, so the data formats. And there's been a bunch of discussions and updates on that particular draft. We're going to go through these individual updates, and then we're going into the second section that should get us to a understanding on how we want to go and take all the individual drafts that we have on IOM-related topics forward. And we categorize these individual drafts into, well, 5 main categories. The biggest category is carrying the data fields in various protocols, which is what we call encapsulations. We're going to go through this entire raft and then see and decide on whether we agree on the categories and what to do with these individual categories. Taking them forward, in certain cases, it's relatively easy. If you think of, you need a Yang model for IOM, where should we go and anchor that? Most likely here. But the ANCAP draft thing is a less obvious discussion. So let's have that after we understand what ANCAP drafts exist, and maybe a very, very quick clarification round. But I don't think that we have time for individual discussions, which is why, next slide, we scheduled a bunch of site meetings to go and clean up individual documents, have site discussions on all these various documents. The first one is happening today. The second one is happening on Wednesday, where we still have to go and figure out which room we're going to go use, because, well, there should be empty rooms, but we don't know which one to use yet. And the third one is tomorrow. And tomorrow we don't really want to go and focus on editing, but we want to go and focus on how people use or intend to use individual IOM data fields and come up with additional deployment considerations. We started having some of these discussions, especially around V6, but we want to go and have these discussions in a more broader way, given that we have a large set of encapsulation drafts for now. So we need to understand, or better understand, how people want to go and deploy those things for other domains. And that leads me, I think, to go and jump into the data fields updates. And I believe Shweta is going to go and take us through the first set of updates. If you click on the next slide, I think the main clarifications fall into 3 main groups. One is a load of editorial cleanup. And so thanks for, especially special thanks to the people at the hackathon last time, because they kind of went into nitty-gritty things and figured out a bunch of editorial nits. And then there is 2 major updates. One is immediate export and one is active. And, well, Shweta, give us an update on, I think, 2 of these 2 bullets.
Okay, so all these were done as part of the addressing the review comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Better now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so there were corresponding issues to all the GitHub, all the comments that were received on mailers from a bunch of people. So we have given links to the GitHub issues and comments and how they were addressed there. So just very briefly here, so namespace was introduced after the work group, after the draft was adopted in the work group. So there was additional clarification required on what fields in the IOM data really makes use of the namespace context. Initially, we referred to some of the fields which would be interpreted like the timestamp. The unit for the timestamp would be based on what namespace the timestamp fields have been added in. So we have given additional examples there in 0.5 version of the draft. The next clarification was, what does the transit node update other than its own node data? So we clarified that it could possibly update the checksum based on the encapsulation. Yeah, it definitely updates the remaining length in a pre-allocated trace option. The next set of changes were related to the flags field in the IOM trace header. So we introduced 2 new flags, which we'll discuss in the next 2 slides. The loopback bit, which was essentially to, when you see there is a failure, you want the packet to go back in the reverse direction to see till where the packet reached. So this there was this loopback bit, but it was unclear on how the loopback, which is really a cloned packet of the original packet, will be dealt with and dropped at the boundary. So there is a little bit of text clarification on that on the loopback bit. Then there was the comments on the must and should. So we those are updated according to the 2.119. Then a bunch of changes to the trace type bits, which was increased to 24 bits from 16 bits, but there was redundant 16-bit in examples as well as in the description. So those were updated. The next part is how the node data is stacked. So we go, the node data is populated in a stacked manner instead of queue. So that's uniform across pre-allocated and incremental. So that's, again, a text clarification. So there was a comment on the buffer occupancy data field, which referred to the memory pools in the interfaces, which has been clarified again. This could be percentage or number of memory buffers remaining. Again, that would be dependent on the namespace. So this goes back to the point 1 in the edits. So we had a reference to tube for referring to the E2E, how it applies to a group of packets. So that has been updated to the packet group instead of tube, just so that we don't have to refer to another terminology where tube was undefined. So we have modified it to packet group. So that's the bunch of editorial changes that have happened.
Greg Mirsky, CT. I have a question. So the scope of this draft is on data types. So the how loopback bit that controls the behavior of IAM is a data type.
So that the IOM header for each of these options is also part of the data fields. And without that, it's not really possible to have a uniform representation of the IOM data in different protocols. While this doesn't define the protocols, the header for the trace E2E, by the nature of definition of the options itself, that is integral to the part of the data draft. It's not really just the data fields, it's data fields plus context.
That's exactly. So basically, I iterate that the scope of the draft as defined and being adopted by the group is data fields, not the behavior of the protocol.
This doesn't define the protocol behavior, but I would like to
it does. Okay, I disagree.
Frank,
so can I jump in on this, Frank? Our milestone, November 2018, not my fault too. Submit a standards draft on end-to-end IOM-based measurement methodologies to the IESG. So that's what's in the charter, right? So I don't necessarily want to get into a discussion about the wording of the milestone because we don't have that much time. I think that the idea is that this document was brought in to IPPM. The data model that is here is sort of the minimum viable non-encapsulated thing that you can use to support these measurement methodologies. I'm not making a technical decision as the chair here, but it seems to me that what I'm hearing from the editorial team is that you can't actually just pull this out without any you can't pull the data model out without any influence on the control loop of what gets put into this header and still have it work.
Right.
Right. So,
yes, but the draft.
Can you rephrase your question in a way that doesn't review the milestones?
No, again, I'm not questioning the milestone. I'm saying that there is a disconnect between what's stated in the scope of the document and how the document was adopted by the working group and what being put in a document.
Perhaps we can take this discussion in one of the side meetings we are having.
Okay. What's the coordinates to that side meeting have already, or they're already on the list, correct? Yeah.
Maybe we can go to the next one and get the one after this.
Yeah. So this is,
So there are two new flags defined. One is the active flag, another is the immediate export. Immediate export, Barak is going to talk about. Active flag is, so earlier we had a reference to, or there was an edit to the draft which talked about how it applies not just to the passive or hybrid OEM, but also to active. So you could create probes and include IOM in the probes so that you could collect the IOM related data only in the probes that have been initiated. But there is no way to figure out whether the data packet is real or it's a probe request, so that at the IOM boundaries, at the decapsulation node in the IOM domain, that packet can get dropped or treated differently from the actual data packet, which needs to be forwarded after the IOM data has been extracted from it. So this flag essentially is marked when it's a probe packet or an active OM related packet, so that it can get treated properly in the decapsulating node.
Okay, Greg Mersky, ZT again. So we had a discussion on the mailing list, and I pointed out that this particular enhancements that being added, again, outside of the scope of the document. And I believe that Frank understood and said, yes, that probably means that that should be in a separate document. So, but you put it in this document nevertheless.
I do not. Okay, Frank is going to answer that.
So Frank Buckner's given that was addressed to me. I think that's not true. What I said is we are defining flags and data fields in this document. That's what we're doing. We're not defining the behavior, the control plane, and whatever happens around that in this particular document. But we need a place where to define the flag, and that's the data draft. So we can, and that's also why we have the session tomorrow, how people want to go and deploy the thing, how they're using it. We will have a raft of probably additional documents that talk about how you use certain things, but we need an anchor point where we define the flag, and that's also what I said on the mailing list.
I'll forward the email. Maybe it was my misinterpretation of your words, but I don't think that, again, this data fields are data that's being collected. This is control information that controls the behavior of the protocol, and that's, I believe, is not in the scope of the document.
Hi, so Brian Trammell as an individual. So I do want to raise a little bit of a flag here, that this particular, so I don't really have an opinion on the the control versus data thing, right? Like you obviously, if you're doing anything in band, you need some way to have some in-band control information for exactly what gets done with things. I do think that there are probably dragons here, in that when you take a system that's designed such that you're never touching the forwarding plane, and you're allowing the forwarding plane to do things to the packets, like so. One of the points of the active flag is to say, okay, well, you can stick it in a different queue if you get into trouble, for example, right? You are now modifying the operation of the system that you're measuring, which means that you're dealing with an entire different sort of theoretical basis for how you manage these things. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that there needs to be like a little sort of like red and black button thing here. It's like if you use these active, if you use this encapsulation for active measurement that you are mixing with passive measurement, you need to be very careful about the design of the measurement. I'm not saying there's a reason not to do it. It's a reason to put a big flashing light on it and say, be careful here, because I think this starts to be the boundary between things that we're pretty sure we know how to do, and the problem is we just need a common way to do it, and here there'll be research. Now, this is IPPM, so we've been fine doing research for the past couple of decades, right? So it's like it's not bad. It's just that this is the place where we need to be careful.
Sure. So essentially what you're saying is having this flag for restricting it just for the decapsulation is not sufficient. We probably need to have additional disclaimers, warnings to define how it.
And that might turn this into something that goes into a separate document. Sure. I really don't care about that argument.
Sure.
Like I guess as a chair I'm supposed to, but like as an individual, if the stuff is there, fine. If I can read it, if it's usable, that's great. But this is. I'd like to call this out as we're crossing a threshold here, and we need to be mindful of that.
Okay.
So Mia Kulevin, also individual comment. I can just very much agree, and it goes even one step further, because if you're going into active measurements and you're actually duplicating packets and you're creating data, then you have to consider congestion control, all these kind of things. So it's a completely different part of considerations, and I would really recommend you to rather design a completely different protocol for it and not try to squeeze it in here.
Sure.
I would be very careful about that.
Okay.
Frank Bruckner. So I think we are over-exaggerating what this is. You can do it without the active flag at the expense of another ACL that filters out that other traffic, right? So this thing was introduced to help the implementation and make it simpler. You can do active, you can do anything with IOEM, because all we carry is metadata in packets, and whether these packets are active measurements or customer traffic, IOM doesn't know. This is a help to an implementer in case you're doing active measurements with IOM. So as I said, we can design around that. It just makes the implementation more awkward, which is why that flag was introduced.
Yeah, so maybe at this point, this is a signal that we should take this to the side meeting, because we were talking about this particularly in the side meeting. But again, I'm not reacting to the flag because I think the flag is a problem. I'm reacting to the flag because it brought this flexibility to my attention, and with that flexibility, comes responsibility,
Sure.
not to melt the internet. So.
Igor Lubashev. So it's similar vein that it seems like it's going beyond passive measurement. So flags like loopback, it's clear why it was introduced. For example, it's trace route is an obvious use case, but it's now awesome vector for a very easy DDoS attack. Right now, it's a great way to amplify DDoS attack, and it's very hard to defend because it's actually even designed in the protocol as to be. It's not even a limited domain flag. It's to be set by the actual sender. So that's looks like it's supposed to cross the whole internet end to end.
No, this doesn't really mean that, right? Even within the domain, if you don't really want to add IOM to all the data packets, but you want to do some troubleshooting and craft packets and do some active OAM, and you'd want to get the complete trace and not ICMP kind of active measurements, you could use IOM within the ICMP ping, for example, right? And get the entire trace and hop by hop delays, buffer occupancy,
Right,
and so
right.
on.
I'm talking about the amplification attack, right? So you could always send one ICMP packet and get one back, or get another one sent to somebody else. But this way you can send one packet and get 30 devices en route, send the copy of the packet to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to interrupt this discussion right now because I just realized that the note taker is up here having an interesting discussion with people, and I can't connect to Etherpad. Can anyone in the room connect to Etherpad?
No,
You weren't able to. Okay. Yeah. So please, everyone take notes and send them to the chairs, and we will do the fun thing of merging them together. I really don't want that, but who's the SRE on call for Etherpad? Oh, okay, cool. Good.
We'll merge and send it to the
Give me a pager. Just saying.
Mia Kulevin again. So I do understand that this is a data model and you can do whatever you want with it, right? But it's designed with a certain scope in mind, and the scope with the in pseudo is kind of, what we focus on. However, I think what you actually want is not talking about active measurements here. It's talking about having a flag that tells you, please drop this packet. So maybe that's the name you should give the flag, just to be future-proof, but I'm still not sure if it's the right approach. And on the point of making implementation more easy, just because it's more easy to implement doesn't mean it's the right design choice, right? Sometimes it has a benefit about making people think about what they actually do than trying to just get the easiest way out.
No, but actually with just classification, it's hard to figure out which is a control plane, which is a data packet versus a probe packet, which needs to be dropped. So we need something like this, but if you want...
No, if you use a completely different protocol, you can design this other protocol in a way that's easy to distinguish, right? It's more design work, but the implementation can still be made easy.
Okay.
Barak Milanox. I just wanted again to, as response to Igor, this bit doesn't tell you to duplicate any packet. It's just telling you that you need to drop it instead of decapsulate, right? So it doesn't mean that you should further on add data to the data plane. So just verification.
Okay. With that, Barak, you want to talk about that?
And these will each be one.
Yeah.
So it doesn't advise anybody to duplicate packets or whatever, but it has this example in the text right now. And no matter if you call it active or drop or whatever, if you drop a packet, there's an assumption that it's not needed anymore, and maybe it's created somewhere. And if you create your own packets, you have to put a big warning in there. This has implications on congestion control, and you have to carefully think about it, right? That's like the minimum you have to do.
Sure. So for immediate export flag, so we added another flag. So currently, up until this flag, all the data collection used to be embedded in the packet itself. And the idea here is to enable also for nodes to export the data immediately instead of embedding it into the packet. The motivations are related to security concerns that raised in some environments, space limitations within the headers, implementation simplicity, so it helps implementers to collect data from data plane, and also the potential loss of telemetry data if a packet that someone embedded telemetry into will get dropped on its way. It may get coupled with end-to-end in order to add more context to the data that may get export towards a controller. It's not a must, but it's kind of an option that we're going to discuss further on.
Yeah, this is Howie Song from Huawei. I think this is an implementation of the postcard-based telemetry, which we have covered in another draft. But unfortunately, I don't think this works because it's only set a single bit, doesn't allow the collector to correlate all the postcards from different nodes. So you mentioned you can combine this with the E2E mode, but as we have discussed in the email list, that just make a mess about the semantics, because E2E means just to do this, but from the both ends, not supposed to be processed during the on the forwarding pass. So the better way to do that is actually just support another mode in IOM. In that mode, you can just it just suppose every node should export a postcard with enough information to allow the collector to correlate all the postcards.
Yeah, so we have this discussion on the mailing list, I believe. Yeah. And we decided to keep this discussion on the side meetings, I believe. Right. So let's further discuss it. Yeah. Thank you for the comment.
Since we've referenced it a bunch of times, it is in a long email list thread, but could you, at the mic, state the time location for the side meeting, just for people in the room? Frank?
I think it's today.
So I think there is, if you go back in the slides, I think you can go and have
it's right there.
Everybody take a photo.
Yes.
6:30 today, 6:30 tomorrow, 1:30 on Wednesday. Barak, I had one more question on the immediate export, and well, it potentially opens a rat hole, but you can either export at every single node, or you can have nodes decide on whether they want to go and export and carry on. And I think you had a preference to do a must statement. You have to go and export everything, as opposed to a node decides on, well, I filled up to a certain level, so I had, say, room for 6 hobs, and from now onwards I don't have room anymore, so I can go and, rather than do nothing, I can go and export. Mm-hmm. Should we go and consider that as an option?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, Brian Trammell as an individual. I heard the word rat hole, so I decided to get in the mic line. So I like, I'm a big fan of this feature. I think this is really useful. I think as with the active flag, this kind of points to a set of modes where you have to be very careful. It's very easy to create a foot gun with this. So there needs to be a really big anti-foot gun section. I mean, I guess you can call it security considerations, but it's really about how to ensure that there's a safety envelope for misconfigurations, right? Because it's very easy just to blast your monitoring collection system off the network. And then you know there's a problem, right? Because it went down, but it's hard to diagnose. I'm not sure exactly what shape that safety envelope should take. It might require additional information in this header, just as input. So thanks.
Thank you.
Now is the time of the policeman. Yeah, I'm looking forward to you being the policeman. So I think we have roughly 15 individual drafts that we spend 14 minutes on. Yep. And so if people could go and line up at the mic. So could you just maybe go and really quickly show the agenda so that you know when you're up?
Oh, yeah, you can. Everyone can.
And it's 8-point print, so Brian, it really helps.
Who's first?
Brian is first.
Yeah, Brian's, I think, is not here, and okay. I'm going to go, and if somebody's not here, what I'm going to go do is do a maybe 20-second, yep. I read the abstract so that everybody is aware, or I might even shortcut the abstract.
And questions at the end.
And questions at the end, please, yeah. Yep. So I think that's 11 minutes. So first on is, let's go do that. This is not even an individual draft. Just for reference, NSH encapsulation is adopted by SFC. So that's progressing there for people who kind of miss it here. It's there. Next one. So Brian Weiss has been shepherding this work for a while. I don't believe that he's in the room. Is he here? He's not. So he came up with an encapsulation that works for protocols that use either type as next header. So things like it works for GRE, it works for Geneve, and there's been a discussion, and I believe he's updated the draft per the working group discussion last time on how to go and allocate that particular code point. Next. IOM over V6, I think Shweta.
So we have mapped all the IOM options that are defined in the data draft to hop-by-hop and destination options in V6. There are the trace options and proof of transit that need to be updated by multiple nodes in the hops. Multiple hops are mapped to hop-by-hop options, while the E2E, which is a IOM domain boundary option, is mapped to a destination option. Yeah.
Next.
So we have a draft to explain how it should not break 8200, and this is mostly to have all the considerations for deploying it in V6 and how the option should not break any of the V6 must stuff like inserting data in flight, which is not allowed by 8200, how we can get around that, and the solutions, possible solutions for it are listed in this draft.
Okay, cool. We're doing really good on time. So there is a new ref, which is basically just cosmetic on Geneve, and it talks about another approach if you're not using either type to go and encap the whole thing into Geneve. And that's progressing as well. Okay. Next one. So we have something for V4 options now.
Yes, so we suggested a new draft for encapsulating IOM in V4. The idea is not new, as some of you may notice. So RFC 791 already suggests to embed some telemetry data into the IPv4 options. So we simply follow this idea and essentially suggest to expand the ability to insert more types of IOM data into the IPv4 options. The note is that there is some, limited space in the IPv4 options. So we need to be aware of these limitations. It may still support some simple use cases. And in addition, if immediate export is being used, so it's kind of resolve these problems.
We discuss in this draft some, considerations regarding to the IPv4.
Out of time.
All right, thank you.
And there is another one on integrated tactic optical in situ OEM. Do we have anybody here that would represent that draft? No, I believe it is about using IUM at the optical layer, and I believe it's even informational. So if anybody wants to go and add another sentence? No? Okay, next one. Then we go into the wild, wild west of IUM and segment routing. So there is one draft, and we have another similar one later on that talks about segment routing in MPLS.
Yeah, so it says that adoption in this working group, but we know that expertise for IOM is here. So we had submitted draft to Spring, but if you want to do the work in the IPPM, we are also okay to do the work here and keep the Spring working group in the loop.
Yeah, and what it does is it puts a label, and that label tells you right on top of the label stack you find IUM metadata, and then, well, your other headers and payload, right?
Yeah,
we'll have a draft that is very similar to that one later on. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next one. There is another one on IUM and SRv6.
So this one uses IOM TLV in the SRH for SRv6. And again, same comment, it is a Spring. Actually, it's also part of the 6-band draft as well, but we are flexible to do the work in IPPM.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So in addition to IOM, we expect there will be some other in-network services which need to add some instruction header to the MPLS packet. So the current common approach is to use some indicator in the label stack. Then they will compete the location between the label stack and the payload. So that's not a scalable solution. So here we actually propose to you to add the extension headers to allow we to stack all the service header or instruction header together just after the normal MPLS label stack. So that's we believe that's a more scalable way to do that.
One question, not really for clarification. Do you want it here or somewhere else? Because there is no yes/no mark.
I think maybe the MPLS working group is a better place.
Fair point. Good. Next.
I just have one comment, Rakesh.
Later.
Nope. Sorry.
We have considerations of IP encapsulation for SFC and IFIT.
They are not here, so I will do that on behalf.
Good.
So basically, again, the current approach is to put the instruction header and also the metadata together for the IPv6 or SRv6. That will cause some performance issues. So we think the more efficient way is actually split the instruction header and the metadata part into the different service header. So we prefer to put the instruction header before maybe the SRH if it's a SRv6 case, or the routing option. Then puts the metadata part after that. That will be a more efficient solution in terms of performance.
Okay. Again, the question: do you want it here or somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, you're not sure then.
We're gonna have a big discussion about that right now.
No, fine. Okay, so
to you, do we want to have the encapsulation discussion now while it's fresh, or do we want to go through the data export stuff and then
I
come
think
back?
it might make sense for everybody to understand what type of categories of documents we have, because it just means that everybody has the full soup in front of them.
Go.
So export.
Yeah. Hi, Greg Mirsky, CT.
So you're presenting the export draft?
No. I would like to option.
Questions at the end.
Let's discuss.
Discussion at the end.
Discuss after.
Discussion at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
Say both shares.
So we have this raw export
you can pull
using.
the mic down so you don't have it down.
I prefer this. So we have a IPFix export of raw export of IOM data where we don't really convert it or interpret the fields, aggregate the fields received in the IOM data, but export it in a kind of raw format, which could help in performance in data plane. So we have this draft which defines how the raw data can be encapsulated in the IPFix records by defining a bunch of set IDs, and it also defines how additional context like a bit of the IP header or any of the preceding headers to IOM can be included alongside the IOM data and the options itself. It does give additional context on why this data was exported, whether it was exported because the packet was getting dropped or due to congestion or error. So there are a bunch of flags as well defined as part of the export. Yeah.
Thank you. Next. That gets us, I think there was only one on export. That gets us into the domain of Yang models and other operational models like profile and what have you. Who does the Yang model? Nobody? So I think that draft is progressing for a while. It tries to go and really help with IOM configuration of individual nodes because there is a lot of operational things that need to happen for IOM to work. That is not really covered anywhere because we don't transport that information in a control protocol or in the data plane itself. Hence, there's been work done to go and drive configuration to the nodes, and that's covered in this particular draft, and it's progressing for a while. Next. IOM profile, Tal.
Tal Mizrahi, Huawei. So this is a new draft, and the idea is that it defines profiles. A profile is a use case or a set of use cases in IOM. It typically defines a set of rules that limit the scope and functionality to a specific subset. And by doing that, we believe it simplifies implementation, interop testing. It's important to emphasize that quite a bit of a profile can be defined by a specific assignment of the Yang model, the IOM Yang model. And like we said, there's a discussion tomorrow, a side meeting at 6:30 p.m., which is related to IOM deployment considerations. This will be one of the topics there. So if you're interested, please be there.
Thanks, Tal. Next. It goes into tooling. So it's one on kind of using ICMP to go and query and configure IOM.
Yeah. So this draft has already been presented twice in Ippm working group, in IETF 1.0 and 1.03. So we think it's already discussed on the mailing list and off list. There are two reasons I provided for Ippm working group to consider adopting this draft. First is interesting and useful. Secondly, it's tightly based on IOM data working group draft. So I think it's a bit belong here.
Okay, next. Additional options. That's on postcard. It was mentioned before.
Yeah, mentioned before, but in this draft, we actually covered two variations. So one is, as we said, we introduced instruction header into the packet. But in another case, in case we don't have any possibility to add a new header to the packet, then we can simply mark the packet or color packet by reusing some existing base in the header fields. So we can notify the node on the path to generate the postcard packet to the sum collectors. So in this draft, basically, we covered these two different variations. The first variation with the instruction header, we intend to make it another option for the IOM solution. But this the second variation with the marking capability, I think it has its own merit, and so it's supposed to be an independent standalone solution.
Do you want the work here, or are you planning to do it somewhere else?
Yeah, I like to this draft to be adopted here. That definitely. Yeah.
Right. I think that brings us to the end, and I think the key questions, if you want to go one slide more, one slide further, I think it makes sense to have a discussion on what we want to go and get adopted here, or how we want to go and which categories we want to go and progress here. And once we are clear on the categories on how to go and do that, I have a view on how we might go and skin that ANCAP cat, but I think that's probably the biggest problem right now, looking at the amount of drafts that we have in that particular category that don't really have a home right now, and the number is growing.
So I'm not going to open the mic lines yet. Please stay in queue if you'd like to. Yeah, we have some ideas. So Tommy and I sat down last night with the intention to look at these and actually spent a bit more time than we were intending to. It was like, wow, this is actually, I mean, yeah, I knew there were a bunch of slides, but this is a long list and we have to think about it. And I apologize that I didn't have a chance to get an email to the list before last night, stupid late. But I think the decision here, and this is something that was I think discussed in Bangkok, and we just didn't follow up on it because I have paid zero attention to anything since Bangkok for paternity leave and job change reasons. You totally blame it on me. Yeah, I will totally take the blame for that. I mean, Tommy helped, but yeah. So the question is, first, is there another home for this, right? And we'll look at the 6-man situation, right? Like there's a working group, they do V6 maintenance, and they've said, we don't actually want you to bring options to us. Have people who understand the option, do it in another working group. So I think that for 6-man, that you hit the first question, is there another working group? Yes. Do they want it? No. Let's adopt it in IPPM, right? I think that's pretty clear. Can we actually go back to, let's go through the list. Yeah, no, you need to keep them in the loop. Yeah, let's go through the encapsulations. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wait, no. NSH. This is an SFC. We don't have to worry about it. Good. Check. This one I have a whole bunch of questions about, so I'm going to skip it. IOM over IPv6. I think we had pretty good success with the PDM header, how we collaborated between the two working groups. We do the work here. We want to make very clear to the IPv6 people that we're not like trying to sneak something in underneath them. So we need to, work here happens here. Copies both lists. We talk to 6-man. Is that an AD interrupt or take the AD interrupt?
So yes, that's right. Also, if you read RFC 8200, they don't recommend use of hop-by-hop options anymore, right? Was that draft presented in 6-man?
Nope. So it was on the agenda for Bangkok. It got dropped because of time reasons. It's on the agenda of 6-man on Friday.
Okay.
So
and actually both drafts.
Good.
So that fact made us even write the deployment draft.
Yep.
So that we have all arguments lined up in a single document, so that 6-man has a better chance of digesting what we're doing.
Actually, I recommend to merge the draft. I don't think it's useful to have two separate drafts.
I can't hear you.
Merge the drafts.
Merge the drafts, because I wasn't aware of the deployment drafts for a long time, and you really want this information.
That's delicate because 6-man already recommends to make the deployment draft more generic, to not only cover IOM, because it has a raft of options that apply to all other considerations as well. So it's like merging might not be the right way forward.
Okay, then I think you need more text in the current IPv6 option draft. And we need to get the input from 6-man early on this one. I think we can still process it here. We should probably not adopt it before there wasn't any discussion on 6-man, but please coordinate this tightly.
What's the decision? Sorry, what is the decision criteria to go and move beyond 6-man discusses? So how do we see a discussion conclude in 6-man?
So, I mean, if you don't see the discussion to conclude, and I don't know how that will happen, I don't know what the discussion will be because it didn't happen yet, but if you don't see it conclude, it will not go through the end of the process. There will be ISG considerations about this and concerns, right? So you have to get in touch with this community and you have to find a solution.
Well, we're in touch, right? I'm just wondering how long we go and take that. Because right now it's an infinite loop.
Yeah, so that, I mean, as I said, the discussion didn't happen yet, so I don't know. But if that
Well, it
continues,
happens as we speak, right? So
yeah, if
it's
this
on the list.
continues, if this continues to be an infinite loop, then there might not be an IPv6 option.
Okay.
Okay, actually, now we got to go back up to the ether type thing. So it turns out we don't have an 802.3 liaison manager. I thought we did. We have an 802.1 liaison manager, which is not the right thing to do for getting an ether type. Have you talked to Eric? Huh? What? One's not ether types, right? Is it in one? I thought one was like other in-caps and stuff. Have you talked to Eric Nordmark about this? We should probably loop him in on making sure that we do the right thing. I am disinclined to adopt a document in IPPM that assigns an ether type just because it seems kind of difficult to justify under the charter, and I am not sure what the right working group for this is. Maybe int area, or maybe AD sponsorship.
Again, it would be good to go and come up with a recommendation.
Yes.
So that we are not kind of free floating.
Yeah. So my recommendation here would probably be int area, but the way that I would check that recommendation is correct or not is to talk to Eric Nordmark, and I will take that on as an action item this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be good if somebody from an AD perspective would actually do that recommendation, so that we can go to int area with some authority.
That's not how authority works, but yeah. So
it's this window shopping or
right.
tripping.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and I think that Eric can help here. And I will try to. So, having said that, let's pop back down to Geneve. Why do Geneve if you get the ether type? Because ether type seems like it fixes the problem. Is there a technical reason? Do you save a bit here, or?
No, it just depends on how you want to go and do this, right?
Right.
Somebody has to go decide,
right?
So I have, before we go on here, I have a more high level question. Because I think you said this at some point, you need to discuss use cases and scenarios, and you need to figure out what you actually need. I don't think just like spreading 20 drafts over the whole IETF is a good strategy. And a different strategy could be like to concentrate on like 2 or 3 of these first, and then get them through the process, and then talk about the other ones later.
And I would say that the ether type one there seems like a higher impact one because you can use it in a lot of different places. And the V6 one seems like a high impact one because it works on anything that encaps on V6. No, it's not going to happen. Don't even try.
Actually, if I may, I was about to mention that we should not forget that ISG decided not to do IPv4 development.
Right.
In IETF 97.
Yes, that's not the only reason not to do this, but it is a good one. I don't even know what to do with this. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, so you've presented these in spring. Oh yeah, can you actually come up and answer a question? You've presented these in spring. Is there interest in adopting them?
No, so we haven't presented this in spring yet.
Okay.
It's 0.0 version. Just wanted to point out that the extension, there is an overlap with extension header draft, which is in the MPLS working group.
Yep.
And we have also seen transport IPPM draft that also talks about some part of this as well. So there is overlap in different drafts for this work.
Is it different drafts with the same group of authors or different drafts with different groups of authors?
Completely different groups of authors.
Those groups of authors should sit down and talk to each other and then come to the working group. I think, following the policy that we came up with, which I think is a pretty good one, if you can get these in spring, that's the right place to go. Okay. Because spring doesn't have a policy like 6-man that says, hey, we don't care about your extension headers, just make sure you're not trying to sneak one over on us. Greg, you have a point here.
Yeah, actually, I think that because with another document that was mentioned, the commonality is MPLS encapsulation.
Yep.
I think that MPLS working group seems to be, because again, Spring will go to MPLS working group with this document. Right. So rather than going to Spring and then MPLS, go to MPLS all the way.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's a better, thank you. That is good. Okay, yeah. Good. Huh? Take it to SFC.
Actually,
don't know.
Have we skipped SRV6?
This one.
Yeah. So
yeah, we did. Yeah, right.
Actually, again, if you follow the discussion of SRH, that shows how particular 6-man is about headers.
Yep.
So I think that not placing V6 documents in 6-man will extend the time of going back and forth. I would strongly encourage still talk to them and
Absolutely.
ask them to adopt these documents there rather than here, because otherwise going back and forth, asking them to review would be a nightmare, because SRH discussion is very extensive and they're going through a lot of revisions, tracking issues. So better to do it there.
So let me just explain the rationale that we had for, saying do it here is that was the process that we had with PDM, and it worked pretty well. I think the segment routing stuff is much larger than PDM was, right? And that's why it doesn't work well for that. The IOEM encapsulation kind of sits between those two, right? Because PDM was a self-contained thing. The IOEM header is a reference to a thing that we should have better control over the scope of, but a contained thing. And segment routing kind of gets much deeper into the machinery of V6.
Yes, and there are a lot of issues of order of the headers and everything. So again, it requires very high degree of V6
I think
expertise.
you're probably right. So yeah, so that would be so at this point I say we go through the mic line. Oh, do you have one more on?
Yeah, so actually what happened with this draft, I'm a co-author, is that we took content of this draft and put it into the 6-man SRV6 OAM draft, and that is being presented either today or Friday.
Right.
So we will continue the work in 6-man, so maybe we'll discontinue this draft.
Good. And now after an AD interrupt.
Yes, because it's really in the charter of 6-man, it's very explicit. They have the authority to maintain extensions and modifications, but the working group may review a document from another working group, and in consolidation with the responsible AD, both working groups may recommend the ISG that the 6-man working group has to move on, the consensus from the 6-man working group is needed. Sorry, now I messed that up, but you can read it explicitly.
Yeah.
Say
take it there first.
You need to go there first. If they say they want to do it, please do it there. If they say they don't want to do it there, but they don't have concerns, please do it here.
Okay. Yep. Good. So mic line is open on encapsulation. We're going to talk about export after this ends. Anything to do with encapsulation?
No. No, about the encapsulation, but I have another idea.
You need to adjust the mic. It's not,
My name is Joanna from Huawei. I'm new. I submitted 2 drafts. I think one draft is related to IOM, named multi-path concurrently measurement. This is for the SMP and UCMP scenario. What will consider for this scenario? I think please pay more attention to my draft. I have no chance to present my idea. So
I would take that to the list, and I would try to work with the authors of related drafts on that. But I'm sorry, we don't have any time for that on the agenda right now, and this is not an encapsulation question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gori.
Gori Fairhurst, who ran up here from 6-man, where they were talking about some things you should know if you're doing the extension header things. So please avoid the conflict next IETF.
Yep. It was actually on our conflict list. I'm not sure what happened.
Well, don't do that.
It's fine.
Next time. The other thing was I'm not fully convinced personally that the extension header thing is done for places where you want to add this to your equipment. So in a constrained environment where you've got an operator who really wants to do this, then extension headers likely work. So please don't just throw it away because you think it might not work across the whole internet at the moment.
Right. Yeah. So one of the little notes that came out of the discussion is the 8200 is designed for less constrained environments. And yeah, we generally say hop by hop headers, they kind of suck in the internet. But if you're touching the equipment to the point that it's going to be able to do IOEM, you can fix the HBH at the same time. That's a good point. Other comments on encapsulation? Okay, so we will try and compile all of these notes down into.
So what's the conclusion now?
What's the conclusion? Let's go through.
So what is the procedure that we want to go and follow?
So actually, I would say just as, I'm going to escalate this to chair. What I would really like is a picture of the IOEM ecosystem as it is. That would have actually helped.
I'm going to go show that on Thursday.
Excellent.
Telemetry talk.
Yep.
And it's ugly.
Yes.
Right? Because you have you have IPPM going in circles.
Yep.
Then you have IPPM liaising with probably 10 other working groups.
Yes.
And they go in circles.
Right.
And this process makes things go really fast.
Yes.
Because people are putting the thing right now into hardware, multiple of the people here in the room, and it's not helping, I can tell you, right?
Okay. I asked a slightly different question. I was interested in the, do you have an AD interrupt?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. My slightly different question is, I'd like to see the overall technical architecture of what it is you'd like to have, right? And then filter that through the roadmaps of each of the working groups that you need to get consensus on to get it done. And then
I think I'm not following. Yeah. What do you mean with architecture?
Yeah, I want to box them. So there's IOEM, right? There's the data model, right? There are a set of processes that operate on the data model, and then there are a set of encapsulations, and then there are a set of interactions between the encapsulations, right? In trying to figure out where to prioritize how to find a plan to get this through the IETF, it would be very nice to have a picture of boxes and lines that we can kind of put crosses through and say, we're going to triage this out of the way in the first phase, right? Like, so it seems to me like if you want to go fast, just looking at what I think is possible, I think the ether type thing is probably possible, but I need to talk to people to know whether that is, or we need to talk to people to know whether it is, and I can make those introductions and get that conversation started. I think the 6-man thing is the next highest impact thing, and that's a little hairy because we're doing a lot of other stuff to IPv6 at the time, right? It's like, so we're, segment routing is causing a bandwidth problem in that working group, right? And this is related to segment routing, like kind of deeply, right? So it's getting all of the things and putting them in order is yes, it's hard. Beyond that, I'm not sure how to prioritize the other encapsulations at all.
And I think you notice that we're trying to play nice,
yeah,
which is why you have this long laundry list of encap drafts,
yeah,
as opposed to we want a new protocol number,
right,
done, right. I think that was like playing nice,
right,
and following the procedures.
Yep.
Maybe it was the wrong
So
thing.
I don't understand what you just said.
Sorry?
I don't understand what you just said. Like, what is a new protocol number?
If you make IOM a protocol?
Yeah, that would take longer. I mean, believe me. That's not the fast
Yeah,
route.
well, I don't know. And you have one fight and one big one, right?
No.
So I think I'm basically saying the same thing, but I want to ask a question first. You said people are putting this in hardware. What are people putting in hardware? Not like all of those 20 encapsulations, right? Which one are people putting in hardware? Which one are the ones people actually want to deploy?
That would be like, if I don't.
Yeah, come to the discussion tomorrow, right? I think that's one of the points where we're having.
Yeah, but like, as long as you don't have an answer to that, I cannot tell you which one to prioritize, right? And the way to get fast is pick the one that you care about and push for it. We can't push for like 20 at the same time.
V4,
that will be slow.
V4, V6,
V4,
VXLAN, GRE, so either type. Anyway.
I don't believe that anything is like put in hardware at the same time by everybody. I don't believe that. Sorry.
We should cut the mic. Anyway. We're cutting the mic lines. We want to wrap up this discussion relatively soon.
Jay Kumar. I just wanted just
yes, please.
One
Thank
comment,
you.
Yeah. Jay Kumar for Broadcom, hardware vendor, right? One of the challenges we are facing from the IOM encapsulation is a nightmare to implement in the hardware. The permutation combinations of different protocol is just mind-boggling. That's just my feedback, we can have a discussion. Yeah.
Barack, also from Mellanox, also hardware manufacturer. The intention is to support these protocols, right? When is per vendor, but the intention is to support IOEM for these protocols. So I don't see any protocol that is, maybe, unfortunately, the important protocols are being blocked for a long time, and the non-important protocols supported by IDF like Genève, right? We would like to have solutions for what people are running actually in the network, not something that is not running. Yeah, IPv4, IPv6, VXLAN. These are, I believe, the first three we must support as soon as possible.
Yeah, GRE. Yeah.
Rajiv Basari. So as a six-man member, and I responded to a couple of emails, and I would say this: when this work is brought into six-man, I'd be one of them to say, unless this draft or any of the V6 related drafts are changing the protocol specification, six-man is not the right home. Six-man could provide the guidance, could provide the feedback, but that's not the place for the working group, for this draft to be adopted in that working group. Just heads up.
Greg Mirsky, ZT. Again, I kind of lost with our discussion of what hardware vendors implement and how it affects the standardization. So we have many examples that early adopters will get burned because they do with their non-stable specification. And sorry, but that's the reality of the process. You know, we producing quality documentation and specification, and if it takes that time, it takes that time. So you as a business can make a decision. Another thing is that I really don't understand the mark by Frank, what is that making play fair, play nicely. What is opposite to that? You said what?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because again, we all here and we are spending our time discussing this. So please, I think that you should appreciate that.
We do, which is what we hear, right?
But you are kind of threatening to everybody that you will stop playing nicely.
All right.
Jaykumar.com. I have an observation about the encapsulation. So the way I understand the layering, there is a protocol header, there is a data header, which we call it as a metadata header, and then there is a data itself. In today's presentation, I saw a lot of flags which are squeezed into the data header, which effectively impacts the forwarding behavior of the packet, in this case, IOM packet. I think that's not correct. The right place, I think one of the person made that point earlier as well. The right place is in the protocol header. The data header should only contain information like the size of the metadata, right? The checksum of the metadata, something which is related to the data itself, nothing else. That's just observation I want to put on the record.
Right. Cool. Thank you. All right. I think we're out of time for this. I have a couple comments of like what I'd like to see as next steps and directions to summarize. So first, it's great that we're having some side discussions. Please have those. Please send out summary and notes of that to the whole IPPM list so we can follow up on what is discussed there. As far as the related drafts and encapsulations, it seems like we have a next step to do on the Ethernet side, on the Ether type. We have a presentation in 6-man. We definitely want to hear the results of that. I think that's one of the more practical next steps to take. And let's have a follow-up discussion based on the result of V6 and Ether type next time. The other ones, I think we would benefit by focusing on fewer and really just focusing on getting those through, as Mario was saying earlier. So
I think one thing that we can go do as an outcome of the discussion tomorrow is a roll-up of maybe we can come up with that priority list that Mario was asking for.
And so essentially, like, let's choose like one And so when we talk next, one or two, and next time at IPPM, the ones that aren't on the priority list, we're not going to have discussions for those. We're going to focus a slightly longer discussion on the ones we care about. Then related to the data draft, I think we've seen a lot of feedback from the working group that what is currently being specified in the flags are not necessarily bad, but they are concerning. They are doing extensions that we're less confident in than we are in the data type. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, when this document eventually goes to the IASG to the point of the milestone, can it have non-data mechanisms in it? Sure, those may end up being in there, but it may be best for now to have that data document be a little bit more stripped down, not specify those flags behaviors. You can leave them reserved, and maybe let's write up these other behaviors in another draft that maybe we fold in, but let's have that discussion separately, just to really focus and clarify what we're doing. And then if we want to essentially adopt that other work and fold it back into the document, we can do that, but we can do that as a working group, and we can be really confident in that. So I think that's practical next steps here.
Yeah, I think breaking that out into either a dedicated document or a dedicated section.
Yeah, I mean, so
section
just
yeah,
go for it.
So the point is that we basically want to get to the point where we have high confidence in the set of the bits in the header, so that hardware work can continue. And then the things that we have lower confidence on, like however we punt them in the document, we need to say, okay, well, these are the things that you can, these are the things that you can do now. These are the things that you can leave till later in the development cycle.
Okay.
And whether that's a separate document or, eventually we want to produce a set of readable artifacts so that others can implement to those as opposed to implement interoperability with the hardware that's out there. But that's really kind of an editorial question as to how many documents there are when we finally do the thing. But it needs to be sort of like clearly marked, right? Like, so
got that.
Yeah.
And one more question on, I think we covered the NCAP category. We didn't cover any of the other categories. Could you go and give us an indication on whether you want to go and see that work be installed, progressed, for the other categories?
I can speak to the IP fix thing because I'm slightly familiar with it. There is no working group for that. The correct place to take that would be OPS-AWG. I'm not sure that they care. You can maybe send a heads up to that list. Hey, we're considering some data export, which would extend IPFix. The primary review for that is actually going to be an IANA review because that's where the information element changes come out. You can ask IANA for an early review of that even before it's adopted. That'll basically go through IANA and come back to me probably. If OPS-AWG doesn't care, then I think it's fine to adopt here.
Yang models and the likes?
Again, I would say for all of them, let's choose the priorities. If we want to, let's focus on if you want to choose your priorities as two different NCAPS types, let's focus on those. If you want to choose your priorities as not an NCAPS type, but one of these other drafts, choose that.
I think the NCAPS are probably more important to get out.
I think so.
It's not me to choose,
Sure.
right? I think it's a working group to choose.
Sure. But let's have those on the side meetings. And I think we do need to move on if we could have the next presentation come up.
Can I just make one suggestion
Please
there?
go.
The data types are easier things to agree on the namespaces. If you can concentrate on that, then that's the agreement which we can make easily.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to try to hold to 5 minutes for all these guys. Great. Thank you.
Okay, you can start. I'm Mauro Cociglio from Telecom Italia. This is the draft about multi-point alternate marking performance monitoring. We are already presented, so we can go very quick, so we have much time for the next draft. Okay, this draft defines a way to monitor multi-point using alternate marking, multi-point flow. It's possible to define all the traffic of the network, all the production traffic, as a single multi-point to multi-point flow, and to monitor from the point of view of packet loss and average delay. Next slide. But the problem, if we define so big flows, is to locate where is the impairment. Packet loss, for example, or a big delay. In this case, we use a property of a graph that is clustering. Next slide. It's possible to divide the graph in clusters. The cluster is the smallest subgraph that have the property of a packet loss. The property of packet loss is that all the packet that come inside this part of graph is equal to the packet that go out if there is a packet loss. The difference is the packet loss. So it's possible to locate where is the impairment also if you monitor all the traffic as a single flow. Next one. For the delay, we use a method that is named mean delay that is already defined in the RFC 8321. That is the summarization of all the timestamp in input and the summarization of all the timestamp in output. The difference between the two is the mean delay. So this mean delay is true also for clusters. So we can summarize all the timestamps of input point of the clusters, and to summarize all the timestamps of the output point, the difference is the mean delay. The next step is the hashing. There is a draft, the RFC 5475, that combined with our RFC 8321 for pattern making can monitor single packet, identifying the single packet using the hash of the packets. So it's possible to filter using a part of the hash to catch the same packets in all points of the network where this packet passes, and then to compare using the remaining part of the hashing to identify the single packets. Okay. There is a case study that is a draft Sambo net mod Young FSM that define a SDN scenario to find where is the impairment using this methodology. Next slide. Okay, there is only a change from the last version is the introduction of Anycast traffic. So this kind of monitoring can work with unicast and Anycast traffic because the Anycast traffic is one-to-many flow. That is a case that is already foreseen. Okay. So when we want to start the path to become RFC, and so we ask you if all is okay, there is some comments and so on. How many minutes?
You saved a minute and a half.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any comments? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can go to the other one that is also, okay, we can go ahead. Okay, SpinBit is, okay, SpinBit is a methodology that is defined by Brian Trammell in a previous IPPM draft, IPPM spin. This methodology is a form of alternate marking that works in a client-server protocol. And the main ideas of this methodology is that the measurement is explicit. There is no reason to send packets of OM, for example, to share the data, but the measurement is directly seeing the length, the time of the square wave that is generated using this SpinBit. So if an observer was during the path only measuring the length of the square wave, it can measure the end-to-end client-server delay. After this SpinBit, other two bits are defined in this draft that define the valid edge counter that correct the SpinBit in case of some impairments out of sequence in particular, so the measurements are discarded to avoid errors, losses, and so on. We can go on. Okay, I already said that. Some limitation in the SpinBit that is the improvement to avoid this limitation. The packet loss tend to cause wrong estimates because the edge can change, and the ordering can cause false periods, shorter periods that is only a reordering of the edges. Another problem is the all in the traffic, because all the measurements are made using real traffic. If there isn't the real traffic, there is some holes, so the measurement cannot so precise. Okay, we go ahead. We introduce 2 new bits instead, the 2 bits of valid edge counter is our proposal. The first one is the delay sample. The delay sample is the double marking, let me say, of RFC 8321. We mark only one packet inside each period as a delay sample, and measuring this packet that bounces between the 2 ends is possible to have precise measurement also in case of out of sequence. Okay, we can skip because okay, ahead. You can go ahead. Okay, the properties of spin bit and of delay sample is possible to have a 2-point round-trip delay in order to separate, if we have 2 measurement points or 1 measurement point on both directions, to separate the delay between the delay to the left and between the delay to the right. We can skip. Okay, using a simple formula, we can subtract the delay from the different measurement point to have the measurement of the delay in the middle. So we can measure part of the network, part of the different domain, different operator domains to divide the delay and to measure where is the delay. Okay. A short comparison between VEC, the previous proposal, and delay sample, the new proposal. The main difference are that VEC uses 2 bits and delay sample only 1. But there is some drawbacks for delay sample because using a 1 bit, if there is a loss of the delay sample, we use an empty period without delay sample to signal to the server if there is a loss. So this measurement is discarded. Because we have only a 1 bit, we can use a code as VEC do. Another problem is that we have a more complicated observer implementation, okay, because in this case, the observer implementation was made using a waiting period in order to skip the auto sequence. A strength is that it works also of auto sequence, instead the VEC discard the measurement. Okay, we can go. Round-trip packet loss, we add a second additional bit that measures round-trip packet loss. The client marks a train of packets that these packets bounces between client and server to complete 2 rounds. And the server counts the market packets during the 2 rounds and compare numbers to find losses. The problem is to maintain the same speed of market packets during the 2 directions. So we use a token system in order to maintain the speed of market packets with packet loss in the 2 directions in order to have the same properties of spin bit. We can go to the last slide. Okay, we can go because it's the time. Last words are about before. We can see that we have the same properties to separate, to split the network in many sub-networks in order to have measurement also for packet loss as for spin bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Brian Trammell is an individual. Thanks a lot for this work. This is pretty cool. I think there's, when we took the spin bit to Quick, there was a very clear signal that, 1 bit is okay, but you don't get enough out of the 2 extra bits for the VEC for them to do that there. That's why I brought as an individual the general sort of framework for doing these things into IPPM, because I think they can be applied to any protocol. You could even also put something like this on top of IOAM if you wanted to. That was not a serious discussion point at this time. So I would ask, just sort of like other people, I don't want to take any more working time with this right now, but other people who are interested in this sort of thing, we should probably have a discussion on the list as to whether we'd like to adopt generalized measurement methodologies based on things like the spin bit going forward in the working group. So thanks a lot for that. I think we should have that discussion, and I'll try to kick it off without my chair hat on. Thanks.
Okay, I had only one word that also for Quick, I think that it can be useful because in case of auto sequence, it's possible in this case with double marking, let me say, to measure also particular delay that occurred in case of out of sequence, instead of spin bit that for this case is impossible to measure. So for maximum, for average, delay is not so significant. For minimum and maximum, the delay sample is very useful. Okay. The other point is the delay, the loss that is not measured till now.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Who's the presenter? Are these? Yeah. Okay.
This is Horizon. I'm going to present this enhanced alternate marking method.
It doesn't work. Just tell me.
Okay. So the alternate marking has been standardized in RFC 8321. So basically, a single bit can be used to do the packet counting to find the packet drop, or be used to measure the path latency. It can be used end-to-end or per hop-based measurement. Unfortunately, in many protocols, forwarding transport protocols, it's very hard to find the place to allocate this to these bits. With just a single bit, we can only do one thing. We can just do the packet counting or do the delay measurement. So that's also not very scalable. If we don't want to do both or to do more things, basically it's very hard to extend this protocol. So the basic idea is we actually we can use if we can enhance this with a flow ID. Basically, it can help us to identify to which flow we will do the measurement. Also, we can reserve some more data to do more things in the future. So here, apparently, just trying to use existing bits from the packet header maybe not sufficient to support that. But next slide. Yep. Today we have this IOM solutions and some other postcard-based telemetry. Many other in-band measurement schemes all need to insert some actual instruction header to the packet. So that's why we propose actually in those instruction headers there are some enough unused base, reserved base to be able to use to support this kind of features. Therefore, we propose to just reuse, to borrow some bits from those instruction headers to support the enhanced alternate marking. So the first solution is in the end-to-end IOM trace mode. It's end-to-end mode. Basically, right now, there are 16 reserved bits, so we can allocate 2 bits to do one for the loss measurement, another for the delay measurement. And also, we enhance this header with a flow ID to track the flow to be measured. Next. And for the postcard-based telemetry, currently there are also in the current specification there are also 8 reserved bits that can be used for other purpose. Therefore, we borrow 2 bits for the same thing to do the loss measurement and delay measurement at the same time by setting these two bits. The flow ID is already encoded in this instruction header, so there's no other information need to be added. So thank you. Any comments?
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yeah, Tom?
Thanks. Tal Mizrahi from Huawei. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Good.
Okay, so this draft has been around for a while. Just a very short background. What we want to do is to measure the traffic between 2 measurement points, MP1 and MP2. Next, please. RFC 8321, which was mentioned here a couple of times, defines alternate marking. The idea is that you use a single bit in the header to mark the traffic. The color changes periodically, and that allows you to measure the traffic. Next, please. The same RFC also defines double marking. The idea is that you have 2 separate bits, one for loss measurement, the other for delay measurement. Next, please. So what do we do in the current draft? We do two things actually. One is to present a few new marking methods which are specifically efficient. They use either a single bit per packet or 0 bits per packet and provide the same functionality that we saw for loss measurement, delay measurement. And the draft also summarizes all the existing alternate marking methods out there and summarizes, kind of compares between them. Next, please. So there's a bunch of related drafts which make use of alternate marking in one form or another. And some of them are pretty new, some of them have been around for a while. We believe that all of these drafts can make use of our draft, and we believe that all the authors of these drafts should certainly be familiar with this draft and should have an opinion about it. So we want to encourage people, especially the authors of these drafts, please review and please send us comments. Next, please. One feedback that we received from Al, thanks Al. There were several comments, but the most notable one is that we may want to split the draft into two drafts, just to separate between defining new methods and summarizing what we have so far. So we're considering to do that. We're looking for more feedback, so please, if you think this is a good draft, let us know. If you think it is a bad draft, also let us know. If you don't care, also let us know. That's also an important feedback. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
You know, we actually have time for
Yeah,
the next
we do.
one then,
We do.
which is Greg.
Greg?
Greg is. Don't hide behind the column, Greg.
That's okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate their giving opportunity. So this is update to the draft that is accompanied to STEM-based specification, which just thanks for your support and consideration, cleared the working group last call. What updated? We identify now their types. So their idea of extensions is that we have their base header, which is backward compatible with their TWAMP test packet format. That is followed by TLV for extensions. In these types, we identify the mandatory range and optional range. And so to use extensions, we identify in this document, propose some number of different TLVs as extra padding to vary their size of their test packet, do testing of their quality of service on a path, how it's being treated, one way and both ways. So basically, one can use it to do cost testing of the network on different costs, directing, not only generating from the sender on the different cost markings, but instructing the reflector to use a specified cost value on reflected packet and recording their information then being received. Next slide, please. So extra padding is similar to packet padding that is defined in OWAMP and TWAMP. And our proposal is to minimize use of extra padding in STEM just to guarantee that packets are symmetrical size, and then to control their size of the test packet using the extra padding TLV. Next slide, please. In this version, we clarified the use of information fields in the location TLV. And I would not read it, so please look it up and appreciate your comments and questions. The timestamp TLV. Yes, if you look back in OWAMP and TWAMP, we believe that their attempt or intention of error estimate could have been what we are trying to do with the timestamp TLV. In the timestamp TLV, it characterizes only for the reflector, not for the sender, because again, sender will know ingress and egress of the test packet, how the timestamps being received and how their clock synchronization on a sender. So we obtaining this information only from the reflector, and to try to characterize their source of clock synchronization and method of getting their wall clock time of day timestamping, because these affect their accuracy of the measurement. Next. So class of service, already I've mentioned that idea is to verify how class of service done over the path mapping, because often, especially in multi-service wireless access where they provide 2G, 3G, and 4G, now 5G, these are mapped to different classes. Sometimes remapping might be misconfigured, and operators are really pulling their hair trying to test it, because why this class of traffic gets squeezed where it should not. So the idea is to give it operators to explicitly specify class of service on a test packet, and then basically you can generate the sequence of test packets with a predetermined cost marking, and then receive it back and analyze and see whether remapping happens in the path, and if it's as designed or there is some problem, and then do investigation where it happens.
Out of time.
Sorry. Okay, just the basic last thing is that please read it, comment, and we appreciate consideration for the working group adoption, especially since the base is clear their last call.
All right, thank you. 10 seconds.
Rakesh Gandhi. So I see that direct loss TLV is not there. I think we need to discuss the direct loss TLV for counter and what we need to do about it.
Very simple explanation. Direct loss is there, it's just not get updated, so that's why not included.
But we need to talk about it because I think there is alternate proposal for this as well, and we need to converge on it.
Yeah, let's talk it.
Please discuss on the list.
Blue sheets. If you have not done the blue sheets, find the blue sheets. Anyone who hasn't done the blue sheets yet? Okay, could we? And where's the other one? I see one. Thank you very much.
And yeah, thanks everyone. That concludes our meeting. We'll see you in Montreal. And please do go to the side meetings if you're interested in the IOAM stuff. And we look forward to a summary of those discussions. And we'll be concluding working group last calls on our documents. Yes, Al? Yes. Great. Okay. And if you want to discuss the scheduling for the